You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
Are you on Substack? Because I am, and I'd love to connect with you there. I process things there over Saturdays and Sundays, days off, sometimes weeknights as I'm researching and reading other articles. And it inspires me to write things where I'm going deeper into the behind the scenes of what some of the episodes on A World of Difference are all about. I'd love to connect with you there. So if you are on Substack, find me. You can go to loriadamsbrown.substack.com as a free, or I would prefer a paid subscriber, because then you get access to more of the in-depth things that are exclusively for my paid subscribers. I keep my prices as low as they can be on Substack, as low as they allow. But I do believe in being paid for my work, and I believe you should be paid for yours too. So join me there and let's make a difference together. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Welcome back to A World of Difference. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and today I want to share something deeply practical. Whether you're about to graduate with your MBA or you're a mid-career professional looking ahead at the next 20 years of work. Recently, I had an opportunity to attend an AI forum, AI Americas at NCED Business School in San Francisco. Many of you are familiar with NCED. There's a campus in Singapore and France and here in San Francisco. Their MBA is rated number 3 globally, and this conference was full of brilliant minds in the AI space, in the business space, and in the global space of cultural intelligence and all of these conversations. And it was a great space to have really some deep insight being shared on stage and panels and by speakers, and in the moments in between of us having coffee and snacks and meals together, with a lot of just side conversations that were so stimulating, and really a space where a lot of things were coming together for me personally, somebody who works here in Silicon Valley in leadership development and works globally and is seeing the AI revolution, and wanting us to take seriously both the ethical guardrails aspect of AI while also understanding how and where to embrace AI to help create a future of work that we all want to see. So last week at NCED, I heard global leaders across tech, venture, academia, and enterprise wrestle with the same big question. How do we make AI not just a technology advantage, but a human-centered advantage? And here's the exciting part. AI tools are already here, shaping how we work, how we lead, how we grow. But the challenge is, how do you position yourself as a leader in this new landscape? Also, what are some of the ethical considerations around water with liquid AI cooling and hot vapor being released? What are some of the considerations around deep fakes? The fact that AI hallucinates and might give a link to a resource in a website that doesn't exist, or information that might be shared, which recently happened here in a California courtroom by a lawyer where AI was used and it did hallucinate and it gave false information. There's so many things that as we're beginning to tinker with AI and use it are causing us as leaders to start asking questions, some deep questions, some honest questions, and to help solve these opportunities for growth together. So I wanted to start off with just starting around the conversation around any of the MBA graduates out there. If you're about to graduate with your MBA, you have a few years ago, you're recently MBA graduate, got to spend a lot of time with people in this conference at NCED who are in this world or have been in it for a while. So if you're graduating from a talent development perspective, you may be asking, how do I stand out when AI can do so much of what I was already trained for? And so I guess an answer to offer to you would be that AI doesn't really replace your MBA, but it amplifies it. The question is how, and how do you position yourself? Well, many of us have been for a while tinkering with a lot of these AI tools like Perplexity for research, ChatGPT for, ideation or brainstorming, or figuring out how to word something a little bit differently in a way that uses keywords, for example. People are using Otter AI for meeting notes and all kinds of other resources. Your Calendly can do that these days. There's so many ways within Zoom to take some of those meeting notes or within your Microsoft Teams, but pairing them with your human judgment is the piece where we really need to be in the driver's seat. Who's driving this? Who's asking the ethical questions? When and how and where do we use this? And our cultural intelligence. And that's where you, a world of difference makers, come in. Because this is a time for leadership to really step up with the cultural intelligence piece, which I have said again and again is a key leadership core competency in the future of work globally. Ricky Wong from Google DeepMind was one of the panelists on stage. There were many brilliant people that I learned so much from and so many nuggets to take away. One of the things he, sort of talked about was AI can supercharge problem solving, but it needs humans to ask the right questions and challenge the assumptions. AI was something humans created, so it's going to have some of our bias. We're seeing that a little bit in some of the recruiting space, although humans doing the recruiting are also biased, right? So these are things to just keep asking questions about, not making assumptions. Critical thinking skills, curiosity, these are two skills that I see eroding in our society due to a lot of reasons. Some of it we can blame Silicon Valley here where I sit as well for some of the social media and everything that's inundated our culture over the last 10 and 15 years. However, we still remain humans and we still remain the leaders and the difference makers. So continuing to lean into that curiosity and critical thinking skills are really going to give us an edge and help us lead into the future of work that we want to see as we begin to use AI and ask, is this the best way forward with this particular tool in this particular situation? Jeff Ralston, who's the founder of SAIF, which is a venture capitalist here, he reminded us that the true innovation that comes not just from technology itself, but from the leaders who spot opportunity and mobilize around it, particularly as we see AI being brought into global enterprise. And I've had some personal experience with this over the last almost 3 years I've worked here in my most recent role, which was in a tech manufacturing company. And as we were bringing in AI tools, we had an ethics committee around those tools to say who owns the data and ask questions around, can this information that's, very highly secure information globally, how secure is it? So these are some of the guardrails that we're seeing again and again. We're seeing AI start to take over much of law practice. And so there's a lot of concerns around that. I sat in San Francisco in the spring and sat with How Women Invest. I sit on the How Women Lead Board, as you know. And our portion called How Women Invest, we had women founders pitching their startups to us. All of them at this point in San Francisco are AI related. And one of them had to do with law, AI as it applies to law and working through documents and increasing productivity around that. But as you can imagine, some of those guardrails need to be very robust. And so these are questions to ask, not to just adopt an AI tool without knowing what it does, who owns the data, what information should you feed it, how it should be used. But these are the questions we should be asking. So once again, that curiosity, those critical thinking skills are absolutely essential in this AI revolution. Employers aren't hiring you to compete with AI necessarily. They're hiring you to lead in a world where AI is everywhere and increasingly everywhere. So now I want to talk to the segment 2 portion of this audience, the mid-career leaders among you. And you're thinking, what does the next 20, 25, 15 years look like for you? If you are mid-career, you may be asking, how do I future-proof my career for the next 2 decades? At the forum, one of the speakers, Sebastian Bach from BCGX, he said something along the lines of AI is no longer just a tech play, it's really a leadership play. And so here's what that means for you. Over the next 20 years, they're not so much about becoming this AI engineer who understands the coding. And although you can get on Lovable, and that's pretty trendy to kind of play around with that, and you don't have to be an engineer to do that. But really what we're looking at over the next 20 years is about people becoming AI fluent leaders, understanding what it is, gaining some skills around it if you do choose to take an AI approach. And that is relevant for your role, which increasingly in so many industries it is. But it also means understanding enough about AI to really drive adoption, to shape the strategy, and to govern responsibly, especially if you sit on boards, whether it's nonprofit boards like where I sit or corporate boards. The duty of care is really going to involve so much around these ethical questions with AI and those guardrails. It also really means just doubling down, if you're mid-career, on your human-centered skills. Leading change, building trust, creating psychological safety for teams, experimenting with AI. These are increasingly important. I always say, let the robots be the robots. Don't try to outshine AI because it will outshine you. It really will. We're seeing some data around even doctors diagnosing patients and all of that information we've expected doctors over time to really draw that amount of knowledge in their brain. Lawyers, similar, of all the information of what they studied, books and papers. But AI can recall some of that more easily, but we really need doctors to work on that bedside manner. We still want, and arguably some doctors are not great at that, but I think that the doctors in the future of work who have the edge are going to really be those with the best bedside manner. We want that human with us. They can wheel in a little screen and have a doctor be on the screen, but it's like still having that doctor even on the screen that's showing empathy and compassion for your medical situation. And so really experimenting with AI, but building that trust, leading change, and creating psychological safety for your teams. This is something I'm leaning into more for myself in my own mid-career. A practical step would be just to start learning some of these tools, for communication, Notion AI for project management, using Gamma AI to create your slides is something I use. I use Calendly and to use AI to both schedule meetings and take notes during meetings. For podcasting, I've used a slew of tools that I've spoken about before, like Capshow. It's also a woman-owned and founded company. I've met the owner a few years ago at a podcast conference, and Deidre has created this beautiful product for us podcasters that I've used for years now that makes the show notes. So it saved me tons of time. It also creates captions for social media, all the different types. It tailor makes them for each one. LinkedIn is different than Instagram, for example. So many tools there to even help formulate emails related to the podcast itself. So saving me tons of time in using AI. There's several other tools. Riverside is something I record this podcast on, which helps make the video clips. It does some audio editing to enhance the audio, and so many other AI tools that have saved me a ton of time and allowed me to have a podcast as just a hobby and not a job. So I've had a full-time job and I've been able to hobby podcast because so many AI tools have just streamlined the productivity workflow for me. I use Kit. Some of you use that kit.com as well for my email distribution. All of it has these workflows that just make it very productive and seamless because of AI. So if you're considering doing anything like starting your own podcast as a hobby or otherwise, or if you're using AI tools for productivity in your work, or maybe you're a consultant, so many of these tools have allowed you to be more centered as a human and the human-centered leadership skills that you have while automating some of those workflows for productivity. And so spending some time tinkering with some of these tools would be really great. Creating an AI agent. I know it sounds maybe daunting for some of you, but it's not as hard as it sounds. You can actually use AI to teach you how to do it. And I'm sure there's some YouTube videos out there as well, but I used AI to teach me how to create an AI agent, which I did, and it helped to be something that took my leadership courses and trainings and put them in there so that it could train individuals on those things. And some people use them for their personal websites, where you could create an AI agent to come into your website and help people navigate what you have on there if you have a really involved personal website or business website. There's so many ways that AI can take some of those tasks that maybe you don't love so that you get to be more human-centered. And I just keep telling people, lean in to your humanity, become more human, become more self-aware, and increase your self-awareness and your learning agility. These two keys, self-awareness and learning agility, have been found in the research by Harvard and some other places, including the Center for Creative Leadership and others, to be the core, two of the biggest leadership core competencies for the future of work. So if you're spending time increasing your self-awareness, that means, being somebody who maybe creates your own personal board of advisors like I have and many others have. But even if it's something less official, just checking in with people in your life that tell you the truth and let you know when you have oversights and give you a different perspective, because nobody has all the perspectives within one person that they need to lead well, especially in a very fast-paced, changing AI revolution in the future of work. So leaning into your humanity, becoming more self-aware, continuing to learn with that learning agility, these are going to be things that give you an edge in your leadership, locally and globally. And I would say that, tinkering with some of the AI tools, but don't just use them. teach them to your teams and teach them how to use them responsibly. Have those conversations around ethics and guardrails that are values driven. That's leadership. So the second aspect of mid-career also now leads us into the third aspect of our segment here, which is thinking about global and ESG perspectives. We're talking environment, sustainability, and governance perspectives. If you sit on a nonprofit board or maybe a corporate board or an executive, you probably heard the acronym ESG before. It's also something people talk about some in politics, but this is another big theme from this AI Americas Forum that I picked up on and I was curious about, which was the intersection of AI and ESG. You hear about it a lot in industries such as climate tech, for example. But Lily Fang, who is one of the speakers, she's the Dean of Research at INSEAD, she reminded us, ESG isn't really separate from innovation, it's embedded in it. So as we innovate, having these conversations, having it embedded into the technology is essential. AI can really optimize our sustainability goals, but without ethical guardrails, it can actually widen inequities instead. So we can't assume that new technology gets rolled out in the way that's best for all of humanity. If we could go back to 2010, we might think differently about Instagram if we had had some oversight with governments to say who is benefiting from this social media. You could argue that some businesses really benefited from Instagram and giving them sort of branding and presence. But if you looked at a segment such as, tween age girls and even early adolescent girls using Instagram over a few year period and had tested that out, we would have already known this was going to increase a lot of anxiety in not only Gen Z as a whole, but specifically in that group. And so we might have made some different choices if we had known and had, more robust research and guardrails around that ethically. And so now we're dealing with the aftermath of it. All that to say, when it comes to new technology, it's all very exciting. I get very excited about it. I've been working in tech for a while. I live in Silicon Valley. I love technology. And I also know that it requires a responsibility. It requires leadership, and that we ask questions about how this technology is used, when and where, and that we stay very values driven in our approach. So Philip Parker was another speaker that I just learned a ton from. He's absolutely brilliant, also an INSEAD professor and the founder of Botipedia, Botipedia. Go check that out. It was absolutely fascinating to watch his session. It was like a complete fire hose of information, but I was all there for it because it was so incredible. He demonstrated it for us, the difference between Wikipedia and Botipedia and how many more languages are involved in all this information access and also resources. It was absolutely incredible and a real game changer. But he showed us that AI can scale knowledge and education globally, but leaders must really ensure that access is equitable, accurate. I mentioned earlier, many of us know that AI hallucinates, and truly benefits people across regions and industries. So all this to say that for both MBAs, mid-career leaders, and if you're just starting out and graduating from high school, thinking about going to college, I hope that your takeaway is this, that you can tie your AI fluency to ESG fluency, so that as you learn and tinker with some of these AI tools and embed them into your work life and your workflows, that you can also think about the environment, the sustainability, the governance of this in an ethical, guardrails, understanding, and values-driven way as a leader. And honestly, if you can speak the language of AI and the language of sustainability and governance, you'll be absolutely invaluable at the executive table wherever you land and across industries. I don't know whether you're looking to start out or looking decades ahead. The question isn't, will AI take my job, as much as the question is, how will I lead in a future where humans and AI work together? And I think the answer is this, bringing human-centered leadership, global perspective, and ethical foresight into everything that you do. That's where the competitive advantage lives. One of the speakers, and I can't remember who it was at the forum, mentioned when he was sort of asked about, does he have concerns about AI sort of taking over the world and becoming the superhuman force that, makes humans working irrelevant. There's questions around that, those versions of questions that are being asked quite a bit. And the speaker's perspective was somewhere along the lines of, I'm not as concerned about what AI is going to do as I am concerned about what humans are going to do. And that really gave language to something I was sensing and had it really articulated in that specific way. But I think AI in the hands of people who have a nefarious intent, who, lack empathy and are strategically manipulating the world for their own personal gain and unethical reasons, that does cause me to have some concerns, some strong concerns and some fears. And that's why we, just like everything else in our society, where we regulate different aspects of our societies, and that looks different depending on what country you live in, what state you live in. If you're in the United States, that all of this just means there aren't strong answers, but leadership requires that we get together around the table and hear these different perspectives and come up with these answers for our industries, for our society, and for our world. Because we're in a time of change, and this AI revolution means we don't know what it looks like 5-10 years down the road necessarily, but we do know that we need to stay on top of asking some of these powerful questions to get to the answers that we want together with each other, considering not just our own needs, but the needs of our local and global communities and all industries. And so the answer, I think, bringing in human-centered leadership, global perspective, and ethical foresight into everything we do, I really believe that's our competitive advantage and where it lives and how we make the world a better place. One of my favorite speakers, and I went up and spoke with him afterwards, was Johannes Ekstad from Stanford HAI, which is an incredible organization. Check them out on LinkedIn. They're doing some really great work. And he's also out of INSEAD, and he reminded us AI's true impact really depends on how humans choose to use it. Our psychology, our ethics, and our leadership will really determine whether it helps or harms. So that's the challenge, and that's the opportunity for our time. Are we going to help or are we going to harm? And so decisions are being made right now by leaders all around the world. And I hope that we keep leading instead of just passively letting things roll out without questioning, being curious and using those critical thinking skills that have served us thus far. So that's our challenge, and that's our opportunity for our time. And I know many of you are involved in this, and you're leading and you're making a difference. So thank you for joining me on A World of Difference. Share this with an MBA student that you know, somebody in their mid-career, or somebody thinking about what they're going to be studying in college really soon. So whether you're looking at 20 years out, 30, 40 years out, all of us are in this together, because the future of work isn't just happening to us. We're building it together. I would love to hear how you're building it and what you're thinking, what your values and ethics are around AI, and what tools you're using to tinker with. And especially if you have some interest around the climate tech aspect of this, I'm really interested in hearing more about your side of things as we look at the liquid AI cooling and increasingly, creating these data centers around the world where we're doing cooling and figuring out how we're going to do this well that serves our purposes for information to do the work that we do, and also creates ESG sustainability around the planet, because these are things that matter. And you and the great work that you're doing out there is just, I'm absolutely cheering you on. So keep up the great work, keep making a difference, and let us know your perspectives on this whole conversation. Keep making a difference wherever you are. Okay, difference makers, I know you, and I know when you hear something you really enjoyed and you learned from it, you want to share it. I am like that too, which is why I love to promote guests on this podcast for you to get to hear them yourself. Sometimes they write books, sometimes they write on Substack, sometimes they podcast, sometimes their voice is just every day in the workplace where they live and impact their communities in a variety of ways with all the hats that they wear. So if you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you did, please share it with a friend, a parent, a neighbor, somebody you went to boarding school with back in the day, somebody at work, your boss, people on your team, because this is a message they needed to hear. And it have impacted you. Please give us a 5-star rating and give us a review. It really helps our reach for more people like you to find us, the difference makers, the listeners, the leaders, the people in your communities that are making the world a better place. I appreciate you so much. Has life ever thrown you a curveball? I've been thrown 1, 2, maybe 3. Okay, if we're being honest, a few more in life. And sometimes you just need a professional to talk with it about. And friends help and family helps, but having a professional therapist has been a game changer for me because of the skills they bring into those conversations. And I want you to have access to that too. So BetterHelp have been willing to give you 10% off your first month if you sign up today with www.betterhelp.com/difference. You deserve to have somebody walking through this with you. You deserve all the healing. And a professional is the kind of person that will not only listen, but they will give you tools to walk through this journey so that you are not alone. www.betterhelp.com/difference to get 10% off your first month today.